Welcome to the Fleet Geeks podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoy the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook.
So the red light's rolling, and welcome to this episode of the Fleet Geeks podcast. I'm joined today by Mike Dawber from NaVCIS Freight. Mike, I can't remember the last time I saw you. Was it at one of the conferences? I think it must have been at one of the conferences more recently.
It was at the Road Transport Expo at Stoneleigh Park at Warwickshire.
Yeah. What a great show that is, by the way, at Stoneleigh. Fantastic show, the Road Transport Expo. So if you're listening and you've not been, I do recommend going to that. But I think they had you speaking at that one, Mike, didn't they? So Mike joins us from NaVCIS. Mike, you're a serving officer, is that right at the moment?
I am. I'm a serving police officer and I'm field intelligence officer for everything to do with UK heavy goods vehicle freight and cargo crime. So predominantly road-related freight.
Sure. So I was going to get you to just introduce NaVCIS. Tell us about, well, first of all, why is there a need for NaVCIS? I think that's the most important thing. Why does NaVCIS exist? What's important about it?
So, as I said, I work for the National Vehicle Crime Intelligence Service, NaVCIS as Field Intelligence Officer. In case you're wondering who the chap is with a funny accent, I've got 22 years in the police this coming year, and my background's been predominantly around vehicle crime and stolen cars, stolen caravans, stolen plant machinery and agricultural machinery. Then in 2018, I was seconded to NaVCIS to look at freight and cargo crime. So in answer to your question, Pete, around why is there a need for NaVCIS, NaVCIS is the bridge between policing and industry. We're a national police unit that's based at the College of Policing at Wrighton-on-Dunsmore near Coventry. We're entirely industry funded. We've got a number of haulage companies, cargo insurers, cargo surveyors and high street retailers that are funding our work around national freight crime, including flagship partners. So we thank you, Pete, for your continued support. The foundational work that NaVCIS has been undertaking in relation to freight crime is critical and essential to the national picture. The main strategic objective that I was set when I took the role in 2018 was to more accurately map the threat from UK cargo crime. So we all probably know that stealing off lorries has gone on since the 1950s and 60s with that old saying that something fell off the back of a lorry or came off the back of a lorry. But in all seriousness, cargo theft has been going on since time began, but no one had accurately mapped the threat from UK cargo crime. So I was tasked with assisting with trying to get as much data and intelligence through to NaVCIS as I could in order for us to more accurately map the threat. That's meant that in 2017, when I first took the role, NaVCIS received that year 1,530 notifications of all types of UK lorry crime and cargo theft. And then last year, because we've increased our data collection and the intelligence that we receive, last year in 2023, we received 5,373 notifications of all types of UK lorry crime. Those offences have probably always existed. It's just that without the foundational work that we do with the collection of data and intelligence, freight crime would probably remain a hidden problem. And because of that, we've got a more accurate understanding of the national picture and the threat. The foundational work that we do is critical because freight and cargo crime is very different from other organised acquisitive crime types, such as car theft and shoplifting, in that there's no Home Office crime classification code or Home Office counting code for freight crime. So we are with the foundational works critical. Our funding partners at the Road Haulage Association are currently doing a lot of work in this area around a crime classification code, and some of that was featured in the BBC News about 10 days ago.
Yeah, I must say I saw that video on the BBC News that the chap from the RHA was there saying, this needs to be highlighted. This shouldn't necessarily be industry funding this. This should be something that the government's getting behind as well.
Well, we're really thankful. That was Ashton Cole, who's the public affairs manager at the Road Haulage Association. We got contacted by BBC South and BBC South East about 3 months ago in relation to the current picture in relation to UK freight crime, and with our partners at the Road Haulage Association, they're obviously taking that forward from their end.
Sure. Okay. So the next question is around sort of what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? But whilst we're saying about why is there NaVCIS, so 4,500 cases last year, which is what on average just over 10, 11, 12 a day ish of cases in the UK. Do you think you've got to the bottom of it yet, or do you think that there's actually more cases that you're not finding out about, for example?
Well, again, we know that freight crime generally over the years has been underreported. I like to think that crime reporting has got a lot better. It's particularly in my time. So last year, 5,373 notifications. That came to an estimated combined cost price loss value of £68 million last year, and that's estimated cost price loss value. So that equates to roughly, from our 2023 annual report, around 14 incidents a day nationally. Okay. So that is the current picture.
Significant, and it's 68 million at cost as well. So just to reiterate, that's at cost. These goods will have markup percentages and various other costs on top. So okay, so on a day-to-day basis, so you're receiving this intelligence, and then what are NaVCIS doing about it, if that makes sense? What's the actual job on a day-to-day? Obviously, it's about the data and intelligence collection. Is there sort of what else is going on?
So just touching back on what you said around the £68 million, that as you alluded to, it's cost price loss value. So we did some work with our insurance partners around 4 years ago, and they believe that it could be as much as 7 times the cost price loss value. So so that takes into account the hidden harm and the hidden costs that you wouldn't necessarily factor in. So that hidden harm and hidden costs are around insurers' costs, policing and criminal justice costs, retail values that can be anywhere between 4 and 9 times the cost price loss value, brand damage, business reputational damage, associated costs to hauliers, damage to trucks and trailers, is that it could be costing 7 times that £68 million figure. So yeah, that's important as to why we're doing what we're doing. But in answer to your question around what are we doing, when I got put into post, as I say, I'm a serving police officer, but the main area of work and the strategic objectives to combat UK cargo crime were set, and they were, first of all, as you said, the collection of freight crime and data and intelligence, and that's to more accurately map the threat from UK cargo crime. And as I've previously touched on, there's no Home Office crime classification code, but that is the bread and butter, and it's essential for everything that we do. So when I say it's essential, that helps us support business and industry through putting together our risk management intelligence bulletins, our monthly, quarterly and annual cargo crime reports. But also that collection of data and intelligence helps us support those complex cross-border investigations with UK policing. So that is the first and the main objective. The second objective, although it's not as it's still as important, was around supporting policing operations. So as a police officer, my day-to-day business is providing subject matter expertise and assistance to police forces. From time to time, I get called out on warrants to search lockups, storage box facilities, warehouses, And that's when police forces are executing warrants to search premises. And my role in all that is to attend. We manage the UK National Freight Crime Database, so it's to assist with any provenance checks on any recovered goods. So the biggest and best example of the largest recovery that I've been involved was in 2021, when I got a call out from the police in West Yorkshire to some premises in West Yorkshire, where I identified 20 lorry loads of stolen goods worth several millions worth of pounds. That's quite sensitive because it's still under investigation. But when I say I'm supporting policing operations, there's a number of different organised crime groups across the UK that are deliberately targeting road freight. And we're in daily contact with police forces, regional crime units to assist with those investigations. And then the third objective, assisting business and industry to prevent and detect any incidents of freight crime. As I said earlier, we are the bridge between police and industry in the freight sector. We offer subject matter expertise around supply chain thefts, prevention and police liaison if there are any thefts or losses. We're only a small team. The NaVCIS freight team consists of myself as the dedicated police officer, an analyst that looks at freight crime, and then we've got a part-time member of the team that manages the freight crime data and does all the admin work. So yeah, lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, and you're out getting your boots dirty as well.
Yeah, I still have to get my boots dirty from time to time.
So it's not on the preset questions, but hopefully it's not a too difficult curveball for you. Mike, what got you into it? What made you go, actually, I'm interested in getting involved with this? Because,
well, I've always been involved. I've always had a background throughout my policing career. I've got 22 years in this year. I've always had an interest in vehicle crime. So I did stolen vehicle examinations for Cheshire Police for a number of years. So car and key burglary. I've done big cases with vehicle finance fraud, plant machinery, caravan thefts and such like. And then probably the last tick box on my portfolio of vehicle crime was freight crime. Okay. So the job came up in 2017. I moved over in 2018, but I must say, I wasn't naive about serious and organised crime. We've been locking people up that have been stealing 20, 30 million pounds worth of plant machinery, cars and such like. My perception when I took this role was that cargo thieves were just opportunists, where they just cut a curtain, throw as much as they could in the back of a van or a car, and then drive off into the night. And I've got to be honest, and I'm saying I wasn't naive, but those first couple of months in the role, it was like, wow, the volumes involved, the values of thefts, how organised these people are that commit the theft. So it's not opportunist. I've quickly learned that this is serious and organised crime. The people committing the offences understand supply chains. So they know which haulage companies have got contracts to move certain goods around the UK. So they know which haulage companies carrying certain goods will take certain routes. They understand police tactics. They understand surveillance. They've got underground networks of handlers that will handle vast quantities of stolen goods for serious sums of cash. So I've learned a hell of a lot in the last 5 or 6 years. And later on, we'll speak about some more foundational work that we've been involved with. The NaVCIS work is crucial. The foundational work is crucial it's now driving the decision makers at a national level in relation to government and policy and stuff that we'll speak about later on. So, yeah, there's an awful lot, not just operational policing work going on, but obviously strategic work going on as well.
Sure. Okay. So, and then and again, a quick side question, which hopefully isn't too challenging, is with a cost base of up to nearly 70 million, and then what, half a billion cost to the economy potentially. People will see that as like faceless crime, right? Corporations, insurance companies, those kinds of things. But there is a human cost to this, right? At that level, this is having an impact on people's jobs and livelihoods and those kinds of things. So what I guess the question is I assume there's a human cost to it. What does that look like for you? What are you seeing from a human perspective?
Well, I've seen businesses, not all, as you know, and from your work with the carriers and the hauliers, not everyone is a big global carrier. We deal with, we work with small, medium carriers. I know that there's particular small and medium carriers that, as a result of a theft attractive goods, have lost contracts. High profile contracts that they depend on, that people's jobs depend on, just because of one single theft. So that's obviously a human cost. Thankfully, with these offences, violence, robbery and hijack is still extremely rare in the UK. It's not like it is in some other countries around the world, where hijacks of lorries, thefts of cargo, serious assaults take place. They're still very rare in the UK. However, I've spoken to one particular haulier in the last couple of weeks who said that they've had a driver who's become a victim of theft overnight. He's disturbed them and it's left him feeling very, very shook up, and they're trying to coax the driver back to work because the driver has been left traumatized from it and is unsure as to whether they want to be in the driving sector and the haulage sector. And when we're at a time, and yeah, I'm a police officer and I've got a job to do with law and enforcing the law and what have you. But when we're as a nation struggling with trying to recruit drivers into the haulage sector, you can see that there's obviously that will have a detrimental effect further on. Freight and cargo. Sorry, Pete. Freight and cargo, since Brexit now, is seen as crucial to national infrastructure. Since Brexit and COVID, drivers being given key worker status. So this is obviously really important. Driver well-being, mental health for all of us, irrespective of whether you're a lorry driver, you're a police officer, whether you're someone walking down the street outside. No, mental health is obviously a big thing. And if you've got obviously victims of cargo crime and drivers that are obviously either sleeping in the trucks overnight, frightened as to whether they're going to have the loads nicked or traumatized following one of these offences, then obviously that raises some concerns.
Hello, it's Shani from Flagship Partners. We are really proud to sponsor the Fleet Geeks podcast. If you need expert advice or training for your fleet business, make Flagship Partners your first choice. We are really excited to announce the launch of our Transport Manager Academy. With expert development for fleet leaders, we offer fully accredited initial Transport Manager CPC training, CPC refresher, and operator license awareness training, as well as mentoring, support, and professional development beyond the qualification. Our vision is to develop elite fleet professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lonely. There's not many roles where you're that lonely and that vulnerable, and this is serious organised crime, right? It's I imagine some of these people will go to. I know, like you say, the violent side of thing is luckily quite rare, but you don't really know what could occur if this crime is disturbed during the process of it, and the risk to the drivers and how vulnerable and stressful that must be for them, whether just the thought of it potentially happening, let alone actually being a victim as well. Horrific. Okay, so how are you going about your day to day? So how is the process working with the incidents that you receive, 5,000 incidents with a relatively small team? By the sounds of it, it sounds like you're under resourced, Mike. Is that the case?
Well, we work with we're obviously just the national face of freight and cargo crime. So we've got an extensive network. We've got a single point of contact in each of the 43 police forces. So it is part of a bigger network. We're obviously in contact with the regional organised crime units, the Rockies, Morse forces. We've got current investigation ongoing with one particular police force's serious and organised crime unit. We've got another one with another police forces with the economic crime team that deal with complex cases. So whilst we are obviously committed with the foundational work, there is an awful lot of good work that's going on nationally. Last year, we was either notified of, assisted with, told about 325 arrests last year for UK cargo crime. We supported 48 policing operations. So yeah, whilst we're only a small team, there's an awful lot of good work that's going on across the UK that we're assisting with.
Fantastic. Mighty impact from your team. Fantastic, mate. Fantastic. So what are the biggest challenges you're facing, Mike?
The biggest challenge that we're facing is cargo crime seen as being low risk and high reward from the villains involved. So what I said, particularly when I'm speaking to the cargo insurers in London, is that crime is constantly evolving. When I joined the police 20 odd years ago, criminals were still holding up post offices, building societies and banks with sawn off shotguns. Your cute, switched on criminals don't do that anymore because of risk and reward. So, and they don't do that because, one, we're becoming increasingly cashless. So again, if you was to go and hold the post office up, what are you going to get away with? You're probably lucky to get away with a couple of £1,000 worth in cash. If you get collared for that, and rightly so, from the police, and rightly so, you'll get 15 years in prison, and rightly so. So they've moved over to less risky and higher reward types of crime, such as cargo theft and fraud. So you put your armed robbery on one side of the desk with the penalties that exist for that, and the risk and reward for that, and you put cargo theft on the other side of your desk. We had a lorry that was attacked a couple of years ago at Warwick Services on the M40, and they stole £1.7 million worth of Estee Lauder cosmetics. That 1.7 million of cosmetics was cost price, so retail values, you're probably looking at £10 million theft. Yeah. So that's one of the challenges, and we touched on before about there's no Home Office crime classification code and sentencing guidelines. It's I can't even get my words out. It's classified as a theft from a motor vehicle. So that's one of the challenges that particularly the Road Haulage Association is currently addressing through the piece of work that they're doing. There's challenges for the police around recoveries of stolen cargo. So once the cargo, and this is what I found out with moving from stolen cars to stolen cargo, stolen cars are quite easy to deal with because a lot of the time you're dealing with a big lump of shiny, expensive metal on four wheels that's had its identity wrung or cloned.
Yeah.
The challenge with cargo is that once the goods are stolen, they all get slaughtered up and divided up, and they all re-enter the supply chain in lots of small quantities, which makes recoveries of the stolen cargo for both the police and the cargo owners difficult post-theft. So we are seeing stolen cargo being sold through online platforms, so eBay, Gumtree, Facebook Buy, Sell or Swap, Amazon, Vinted, market trader stalls, car boot sales, and such like. So that's one of the challenges for police with regards recoveries. I mentioned before that we do find the warehouses and hidden locations that bulk items are sometimes stored, and we accompany warrants with that. So the challenge around recovery of stolen cargo is probably the second one. Not police related, but more industry focused. The third challenge is the lack of secure truck parking. We said that there's 3 levels of truck parking in the UK. There's unsafe, which would be your motorway. There's unsafe that would be your independent road parking locations, such as laybys, on streets and in industrial estates. There's safe, which would be deemed to be your motorway service stations, and they're deemed to be safe because they're on the network. They should be heard standing. There should be adequate lighting. There may be CCTV. There may be AMPR. And then there's a third level, which is secure parking.
Yeah.
So up until 3 years ago, there was only 2 truck stops in the whole of the UK that had secure truck parking accreditation. So we believe that in order to have any serious reduction in these freight crime offences, the UK needs to adopt a secure truck parking standard or standards that's robust enough to defeat serious and organised criminality. So there's some of the challenges. But on a positive note, the foundational work that we've been undertaking, the policing operational activity that we're involved with, as I said before, that's influencing decision makers at a national level now. It's driving government policy and strategic decisions. And that's reflected in some of the work that we've been involved with recently. So some of the examples of positive work that we've been involved with, working with the Department for Transport around funding for improving security and facilities at existing motorway service stations and truck parks, working with National Highways around those improvements at MSAs, motorway service stations and truck parks. The development and implementation in 2022 of the British Parking Association's Park Mark Freight certification has been a massive step forward. And then lastly, we've been assisting the DFT with a secure truck parking standards report that will be released in the autumn.
Fantastic. That's some really good outcomes, isn't it? Really, really good outcomes. I guess one of the questions I sort of meant to ask sooner, but would it be beneficial for you if there was a crime number attached to freight crime, if that makes sense? You talk about there's no organised crime number, or I think that's the term you used, around tracking and that sort of stuff, and then the related sentencing around that. Is there any chance of that changing?
Well, again, that's what the Road Haulage Association are obviously they're obviously taking that forward, and that's not really for me to comment on that piece of work. However, from a policing perspective, we have spent 6 or 7 years more accurately mapping the threat. We can't call that figure of 5,373 notifications last year a complete picture. As I said earlier, we know that freight crime is underreported, but without that Home Office crime classification code, we get notifications from police forces, haulage companies, insurers, cargo surveyors, high street retailers, and that's given us a more accurate picture. What a Home Office crime classification code would do is it would then, in the morning, I'd be able to come into the office and press one button and get a 24-hour return of any cargo thefts in the UK, which you can do for specific other acquisitive crime types like theft, car thefts, shopliftings. They've got their own specific crime classification code. So sentencing, you've touched on. In relation to sentencing, if the Road Haulage Association was to take this forward, if it was to be able to get a separate crime classification code agreed through the government and Parliament, well, that would obviously then have its own sentencing guidelines attached to it. But again, that's obviously work in progress.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, that's fantastic piece of work that the RHA are on with them, by the sounds of it. And then with regards to the truck parking, that obviously sounds like a real challenge, and with so few secure parking areas, are you seeing sort of service stations coming on board with that? Are you seeing an improved uptake?
Yeah, we work in partnership with the big four motorway service area providers, so Welcome Break, Road Chef, Moto, and Extra. What I will say is the scale and the depth of cargo crime isn't a new problem. It's increased year on year because we've increased our data collection. There's no silver bullet really to combat this. It takes a range of solutions to combat these offences, and that's through working in partnership with police, industry, insurers, haulage companies, motorway service areas, truck parks, truck parking providers. But when I said there's no silver bullet, it's a number of solutions are required to obviously tackle it and combat it. So policing, arrests, prosecutions, sentencing guidelines, recoveries of stolen goods is just one element. Another element is around what we've mentioned already around more secure truck parking facilities. The British Parking Association now have had Parkmark Freight certified and accredited, and there's around 10 or 15 sites that have been accredited. Another solution that the Road Haulage Association are looking at, I'm not involved with it, is around more truck parking provision. The Road Haulage Association believe that there's 11,000 spaces, not enough for trucks to park. So obviously parking's at a premium, and obviously secure parking is obviously part of that. But also, lastly, education and security advice to the supply chain and haulage companies and the haulage sector's another. When I first started this role 6 years ago, some hauliers that I encountered had no policies or procedures for delivering high value theft attractive goods, and some weren't even locking trailer doors in those days. But I'd like to think that a lot has changed through the education piece in relation to that in the last 6 years. So yeah, there's no silver bullet, but we're all working together to try and obviously reduce these offences.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think my last question was around the listeners. So largely speaking, on the podcast, listeners are transport and fleet managers, and freight operators. There'll be business owners, those kinds of things. So what action can they take off the back of what they've learned on the podcast today? What would you like them to do? What action can they take?
Well, in order to support transport managers operationally to guard against cargo crime, they can take the following few practical steps. We have a saying that cargo at rest is cargo at risk. So first of all, the pre-planning of routes and overnight stops is essential. Secure your vehicle. I mentioned before that 6 years ago, I had to go and visit one national carrier who was carrying theft attractive goods that weren't even locking the back doors. So obviously things have moved on quite a lot. Businesses have invested a lot of money in upgrading locks and security on the rear of trailers and trucks. Use cargo area tamper-proof seals. Goes along that same kind of lines. Does your business have a security policy? Are your drivers aware of delivery policies? So that's around being clear, around responsibilities, around stopping locations, overnight parking, and unloading procedures. Drivers should always, as we mentioned before, there's not much violence that is attached to these types of offences, but drivers should always put their own personal safety and security first. Our advice is quite clear that if you're parked up overnight or in any location and you see someone trying to steal goods from the truck, that you should sound your horn, ring 999, and if it's safe to do so, try and move off slowly and get to a place of safety. Keep delivery details private is the next one. We still see drivers writing on social media around loads that they're carrying and routes that they're taking. Plan ahead. So avoid unnecessary stops and always have sufficient driving hours, which I know sometimes due to unplanned incidents or traffic can't always be achieved, but try and have sufficient driving hours to reach your scheduled stop area or delivery location. And from a transport manager risk management point of view, in order to assist the work that we're undertaking, transport managers can consider joining our NaVCIS Freight membership, partnership and sponsorship scheme. As I said before, we're really grateful that Flagship Partners continue to support us. The funders of this work has increased the foundational work from 2 businesses. We're now up to 59 funding partners. These funding partners see the value of our work, and they include small, medium and large hauliers, cargo insurers, high street retailers, and the general supply chain sector. So if anyone's interested, for the membership, you would receive a fortnightly freight crime intelligence bulletin to assist your risk management planning, a monthly, a quarterly, and an annual cargo crime report, an invite to our 4 quarterly NaVCIS Freight webinars that are exclusive to our members and sponsors. And through our membership, it'll ensure that you're more fully sighted on the current picture, the trends around UK freight crime, to ensure that your business is better prepared. If you want more information in relation to our work or our memberships, please give me a shout at freight@navcis.police.uk. Thank you.
Fantastic, Mike. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll put the email address in the show notes so that if people want to get involved and they're interested in sponsorship and supporting the work you're doing, then they're able to get in touch with you through that. And certainly as a sponsor, I think the reports are really valuable. It's very insightful being able to read those and have that. You share that intelligence with the sponsor, so it is very interesting, and I would say very useful for transport and fleet managers listening to have that guidance, have that advice, have that level of understanding. And you've given some really, really good points there, Mike, for people to pick up on. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time out to come and speak to us on the podcast today. It's been really, really interesting, so I appreciate it. Thank you. So, Mike, if people want to get in touch, they'll use that email address that I'll put in the show notes.
Yes.
And they can find out more about your work there. Really appreciate you coming on. Is there anywhere else that you'd like people to, any other resources you'd like to point people to?
We work in partnership with Maple Fleet Services, who create the cargo and road transport security guides. So if anyone wants any information in relation to how to keep trucks better secure, the cargo and road transport security guides are always a good resource. There's a book that they do for transport managers, and there's also this driver pamphlet that goes into glove boxes of vehicles. So that could be another area for you to revisit. So thank you. Thanks for having me, Pete.
Brilliant. Mike, appreciate you coming on. And listeners, thanks for listening. And I'll see you on the next podcast. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.